All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here. Today, we're talking upgraded deck lists. One of my favorite things about this new Fantastical Parade expansion is that a bunch of cards were added that actually make a bunch of older decks from previous metagames and previous expansions a lot better as well. It's really fun. It's nice to see old decks come back and become updated and upgraded and more relevant in this new season and in the new metagame. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. But before we get into that, the tournament, PMPT number 18, is actually going on right now. So tune into the live stream if you're watching this video, and tune in on Sunday as well for the Top Cut live stream. And if you're watching this on Monday or sometime next week, then don't forget to register for PMPT number 19, although I don't have the the registration link for that. The other thing I was going to say is thank you guys for 45,000 subscribers. Really cool. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 50,000 subscribers. And that's about it. All right, let's dive into it. I think I have 9 different decks in this video. And they're all going to incorporate sort of older Pokemon that maybe were relevant at one point in time or maybe never really relevant, but have been made a bit better now with the new cards. And the first deck we're going to take a look at here, by the way, energy types and, the timestamps will be down in the description below. So if you want to navigate the video that way, feel free to do that. Okay, all right. That's enough of the intro. The first deck that we're going to take a look at here is Lunala EX. And this is a card that I think a lot of people were interested in back in the day, but never really saw like that much success or that much play. Maybe saw like fringe meta play for a short period of time. And it's funny because I was on the Pocket Cast with a couple of other guys last week, or I think like last week, and it was really funny because I kept telling them that Lunala was going to be an interesting card, given the new Peculiar Plaza and Mimikyu EX. These are cards that actually pair really well with Lunala, and they're extremely interesting cards for an archetype like this. So this deck list is massively creative. This is a deck that I pulled from somebody in an online tournament that participated and did well, and it's a really, really fun deck. So Lunala EX, if you didn't play back in, I guess A3 is when Lunala EX was released, a while ago at this point. It's a stage 2 Pokemon, 180 HP, does only 100 damage for 3 energies, but it has the Psychic Connect ability, which reads that once during your turn, you may move all Psychic energies from one of your benched Pokemon to your active Pokemon. And this is really cool. And this basically allows you to move your energies, psychic energies, between your psychic Pokemon however you want, realistically. And this was always a strong ability, but it was always a bit awkward because there wasn't really a lot of like free retreat Pokemon or Pokemon with low retreat costs that made it, really viable to play. It always kind of made sense to play it with Giratina because Giratina is sort of like this energy battery that can sit on the bench and generate additional energies. And then with Lunala, you can move those energies to whatever Pokemon that you wanted to, including Lunala. But now with Peculiar Plaza, this effect becomes a lot stronger because we're never discarding energies to move Pokemon in and out of the active spot. So now we can freely choose which Pokemon we want in the active, and we can freely choose which Pokemon we want to commit energies to. It actually creates a really viable strategy, especially when you pair this with Mimikyu, which is immune from damage the first time it gets attacked. And all of a sudden, you have this deck list full of Pokemon that are really annoying to get rid of, that you can kind of swap in and out every turn without really needing to reset up the Pokemon. It's a really, really fun strategy. I kind of memed on the podcast when I was talking about Lunala, but quite literally, I do think with Mimikyu and Peculiar Plaza, like it's actually a much better strategy than we've maybe ever seen before. We're playing one Giratina, again, for the energy batteries, Lunala, because that's the whole, cornerstone of the deck list. And then Xerneas here with Geo Burst. This is going to allow us to KO things like Oricorio. And then one Sabrina, one Cyrus, researches Pokeballs, copycats, and rare candies for consistency. This deck doesn't really need anything else, right? A really, really interesting deck, a really fun deck. This is one of those things where, I don't know if it'll really ever become like a significant meta deck, especially with, so many things like Hydreigon and Obstagoon in the metagame. But I do think that this is way better than it's ever been before. And it just sort of gives me, in a video like this, gives me sort of, an excuse to talk about Lunala. And here is just an example of a player that played it in a tournament and actually did quite well. So I think there's a lot of potential here. If you want to play something that's very interesting, very different than other decks in the meta, this is going to be a really decent choice for you. And I think that Mimikyu is a good card. It just might take a little bit of time for us to find the best placement for it, but I do think it works quite well with Lunala EX. So that's the first deck list today. Lunala now buffed with Mimikyu and Peculiar Plaza. Very interesting. Next up is going to be Buzzwole. We've been talking about it a little bit. It's been seeing some play in tournaments. I actually think that Buzzwole has a bit more potential now, going into this weekend and into the second week, because it is looking like Hydreigon, again, as we predicted last week, would be is going to become kind of the deck that most people are going to default to. I think Hydreigon does well into a lot of the new archetypes that people are playing, and it's just a really strong high roll deck. So I think Hydreigon will likely become sort of the default deck for a lot of players that are just looking to do well in tournaments without necessarily waiting to see how the meta develops. So I think that Buzzwole should have a good matchup into it. It should have a good matchup into a lot of different stuff. This is a deck that really has been retroactively buffed more than anything, but what's really cool is that we do have the non-EX Buzzwole, which can, again, be utilized as a single prize attacker instead of Buzzwole EX. We still have Celesteela, Pheromosa, Kartana. The Grass Ultra Beast package has always been strong. Buzzwole was definitely a very relevant meta deck, but got kind of pushed out of the metagame by but not by Giratina Darkrai, by Suicune and Greninja. And it was actually one of the decks that was good into Giratina Darkrai back in the day. Now with starting planes, I think this deck has been buffed pretty dramatically. In fact, all of these Pokemon on our board will get plus 20 HP. We still have access to Leaf Cape, to Rocky Helmet. But one card that, is sort of new since Buzzwole ever saw play is Copycat. So we can throw one Copycat into the deck, make it a little bit more consistent. But, this is a deck that's all basic Pokemon, very aggressive, very fast-paced, very consistent. I love Celesteela with Pheromosa Kartana lead, Lusamine to bring the energies back to Buzzwole late game. It's a great deck. It's honestly something that I think is potentially going to be a bit of a meta staple this meta. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll have to see how it performs into things like Hydreigon, but I do expect this deck to do well into Hydreigon. At least that's my expectation. So I really love it. I think Buzzwole has a ton of potential. And honestly, it's something that I would tell you to keep your eye on moving forward. So if the metagame is well positioned for it, again, I think this deck has been buffed, and it's always been one of my favorite decks to play because it is just very unique. The Grass Ultra Beast deck is just, the whole package is very strange. It's just a weird deck. It's very, adjacent to everything else like in the game that we've ever had. So I would be excited to see Buzzwole make a return. Again, a lot of people have been playing it. It's been pretty successful, so I think there's a lot of potential for it. Not many things I would change. Again, I think most of the deck here, all you really need to play is like the new starting planes, which I think is a good buff, and then Copycat's always worth playing. But other than that, maybe the new Buzzwole as well. Maybe not, though. Maybe it's not that relevant. You could just play double Buzzwole EX. Who knows? But yeah, there is sort of a new updated Buzzwole deck that I really do like. Next up... That's right, guys. We're diving in here. It's Giratina Darkrai. Don't be alarmed. Don't be terrified. Don't be afraid. I don't know if Giratina Darkrai will end up being, as good as it maybe once was. I still think there's just so many things in the game that are potentially strong against it. Hydreigon's probably going to be one of those things, but keep in mind, a deck list like this has been buffed by new cards. Copycat makes this deck a bit better, starting planes to buff the HP of Darkrai and Giratina, and Lucky Ice Bob, which I think is a broken card that you can kind of slot into this 16 trainer deck very easily. So again, it's just basic Giratina Darkrai, but I do think that this set, more than maybe some other sets, especially the last couple of seasons, have added some cards that do make Giratina Darkrai better. So, if there's ever a time for this deck to come back into the metagame, it might be now with Ice Pops, with starting planes, with Copycat, because I do think the deck is probably a bit better now than it maybe has been the last couple of seasons, but I don't know how well the positioning for Giratina Darkrai is, realistically. So it's one of those things. I wanted to mention it because it's certainly pretty decent, but I'm not as confident that Giratina Darkrai will really make a return to the metagame. But for those people that maybe wanted to, play a throwback deck and just try it out, if you kind of find yourself missing Giratina Darkrai, I think now would be a pretty decent time to update that deck list, bust it back out, and see if it can win you any games. So shout out to Giratina Darkrai. It is back to some degree. Maybe it'll fade back, in a week or two, but definitely buffed. Starting Planes is just a really universally strong card. If you remember back in the day, so many decks used to just be, only basic Pokemon or like basic EX cards before Mega Pokemon came out in Mega Rising, especially like before A3, right? Like, so all of those decks are definitely a bit better now that they all just get plus 20 HP, and I think that Giratina Darkrai is certainly one of them. Next up is one of the more interesting things, and this is Donphan Lucario. And before you guys close out of this video or comment down below that I'm memeing here, you got to think about this for a second. A couple of really distinct cards have buffed this archetype. One being Sightseer. Sightseer allows you to search your deck for, or not search your deck, but search the top 4 cards of your deck and grab any stage 1 Pokemon that you might find. This is actually a pretty big deal. There aren't many decks in the game that play exclusively stage 1 Pokemon, and I forgot about Donphan EX and Lucario, but this is certainly one of them. So I think that Sightseer is actually a pretty decent inclusion to a deck list like this, and not to mention Training Court to further buff the damage of Donphan and Lucario. And we are still playing Flail with Memory Light Donphan because this was a card that came out, I believe, in Mega Rising, which actually also kind of retroactively did buff Donphan a little bit, which is really cool. So this deck list has been sort of incrementally getting a little better and better as time goes on. Again, I don't know if this is something that, you would consider to be like a top tier meta strategy. But again, theoretically, a bit of a throwback deck, something that has been buffed by a couple of new cards. And I find that to be really interesting. Again, like so many of the cards in the set are just sort of generally like generically good in a lot of different scenarios, which means that we can plug them into old decks and it actually makes them a lot more viable. So that's what this video is really all about. Not something we really had in Crimson Blaze, to be honest, and I think Mega Rising was all about these strong new archetypes. But this set list, this new expansion definitely seems to have buffed a bunch of old stuff. So trading area, Donphan gets plus 10 HP, or damage rather. Lucario gets 10 plus damage, Sightseer to grab these stage 2 Pokemon a little bit more consistently. One May, one Copycat. It's really fun. It's a really interesting deck. I would recommend that you go and try it out. Theoretically, this would also, I think, work for Megalopunny. You could just play, you could play both Sightseer and Training Court to buff Megalopunny potentially, which also sounds interesting to me. It does. So maybe the fighting decks have been buffed a little bit by these cards, but anyway, here is Donphan Lucario. Not something you guys maybe expected to see in this video, but here it is. It's in the video. Next up is going to be Espeon EX, which, is definitely something that we have to scroll down to because there's 2 stadiums in here. We have Peculiar Plaza and Training Arena. So people are going to comment and they're going to be like, oh, this deck only has 18 cards. There you go. There's 2 other cards right there. But this is a deck list that, kind of saw a little bit of play, like over the last couple of seasons. I think that Mega Altaria is definitely splashable in other Psychic type decks. And I've seen some people in the past sort of play, the Espeon Sylveon package and just sort of throwing in one Mega Altaria because it's kind of just worth doing. But even if you weren't playing Mega Altaria, I think that these cards would be really relevant. Right? The new buffs cards, like particularly the stadium cards, and also Diantha, right? So like there's definitely opportunities to pile up energies over time, especially when you have free retreat. What Espeon likes to do is it loves to heal, retreat, and then heal with double Espeons and kind of stay alive for quite some time, which means that if we have Peculiar Plaza, we're never actually discarding those energies, which means that we're kind of just able to stack energies. Which is really funny because eventually we're going to have some extras and we can use Diantha to heal for 90 damage. So this whole archetype to me is very interesting. The Indeedee as well slotted in with Espeon for extra healing. Altaria to maybe kind of finish and sweep games, which is really cool. Espeon and Sylveon and Altaria all get buffed by the training arena. The training area stadium buff, and then again they all get free retreat. So this is definitely not something to sleep on. I think that Espeon has been buffed by a couple of stadium cards, and now we can play Diantha with it. So it's always going to struggle in the sense that sometimes it will get one-hit KO'd. Like it only has 140 HP, so the breakpoints are a little different now. But if you're going up against decks that don't deal enough damage to one-hit KO Espeon, it's going to be able to survive for like a very, very long time, and I find that to be really interesting. So here's just one example of Espeon EX, a new Espeon deck that I think is definitely really cool. Again, it plays these 2 stadium cards, so don't forget those stadium cards. Yeah, again, nothing else to really say here. I think this is definitely really niche. I think just normal Altaria decks will likely always be better than Espeon, but again, if you really did love Espeon, here is an example of a deck that is definitely interesting and incorporates some of the new cards, which is why I wanted to talk about it. Next up, let's talk about our guy, Gyarados. That's right. I don't think the OG Gyarados will ever be worth playing over Mega Gyarados. But here's a very throwback deck, a very, very throwback deck here. We're playing Druddigon and we're playing Kamala. It's a hilarious deck because now with Protective Poncho, we can have these Magikarps on our bench very confidently. We're only playing one Poncho, but, you know, maybe we can draw into it enough. And now we can literally just sort of have this Magikarp on our bench until we evolve it, and it's always safe. It's never going to be able to get, you know, damaged or brought up unless you get hit with a Sabrina or whatever. And that's what this deck is. It literally is just Mega Gyarados sweep. Like, that's the entire deck. You just wait 3, 4, 5 turns rather, and then you get Gyarados set up, and then you go into it, and yeah, and then you're just off to the races. So a very funny deck. No energy acceleration here. We're kind of hoping that Druddigon and Kamala can maybe deal some extra damage before we get into Gyarados, but that's the whole idea. That's literally it. Lucky Ice Pop as well. And you got to keep in mind, Lucky Ice Pop is broken. These Mega Pokemon have so much HP, 210 HP. If we get lucky with a couple Ice Pops, all of a sudden, like, it's really annoying to get rid of these Mega Pokemon. And I think Gyarados here fits the bill. So definitely a throwback deck. When I saw somebody play this in a tournament and do well, I was like, man, like Gyarados, Druddigon, like what, you know, what year is it? Definitely interesting. You know, not something that maybe I think has too much potential. I do like Mega Swampert a ton, but maybe Gyarados pops off. I mean, the ability to discard 3 cards from your opponent's deck has always been an incredible effect. If you do get Mega Gyarados in and you discard 3 cards from your opponent's deck, like, you might win the game outright. 140 damage, nothing to slouch about. And again, extra damage here with Training Arena, with Druddigon damage, with red in the deck as well. Just a really fun deck, just a really interesting strategy. And again, so many weird things have been added to the game. Poncho is one of them that really just allows some of these other decks to actually be somewhat viable. A lot more than they used to be, that is. So yeah, Mega Gyarados. You know, I mean, try it out. I mean, is this something you guys would ever want to play? It did well recently at an online tournament, which tells me that it can win games. And that to me is super funny. So, you know, this metagame, I know I talked about how some decks are going to be really relevant, like Hydreigon is probably going to see a ton of play early. But I think as time goes on, we're likely going to see a ton of options. And I think that's what's important with the metagame, is that whatever rises to the top, there should always be available counterplay to that deck because of how many cards we have in Pokemon Pocket now and how many older cards have also been buffed, which is really interesting. So here's Mega Gyarados. Maybe it can kind of find a way into the metagame, maybe not. Next up is going to be Rampardos. In fact, Froggy X Wawan was playing this in a tournament today, and I had to mention it, so shout out to him. This is going to be the new Falinks with Rampardos, and that's the deck. Lucky Ice Pop as well, because why not? But yeah, Falinks is a very interesting card. It's actually a very decent leadoff card. It does plus 20 damage if you have another Falinks on the bench, and it takes 20 less damage, which is, you know, coincidentally actually pretty relevant. We can Giant Cape this thing, bring it up to 90 HP. It takes 20 less damage from attack, so it kind of sticks around. It's kind of bulky. And 40 damage every turn is nothing to slouch about, especially since, like, you can just go Falinks into Rampardos, or go Falinks into Rampardos, and all of a sudden we have enough damage to get around a lot of Mega Pokemon. So this is a very interesting card. I know some people were really high on Falinks. Honestly, it's definitely not a bad option. As far as like the fighting leadoff Pokemon go, it might be better than like Hitmontop, and it might be better than something like a Hitmonlee. You know what I mean? So those were really the only like Pokemon you would ever like lead off with. But it has a retreat cost of 1 and an attack cost of 1. It's just something that I actually find to be pretty interesting. So here is Falinks Rampardos. Maybe Rampardos comes back to the metagame. Fossil Pokemon have basically struggled ever since Chingling came back into the game, because Chingling does counterplay fossils. You can't play the fossil from your hand because it's an item card until you play it. So Chingling Lock will stop the fossils, but Falinks will just blitz through those Chinglings, right? 40 damage, it will one-hit KO. So especially if you go second with Falinks, like 40 damage on your first turn is like really relevant, and we can Giovanni and stuff. It's very fun. It's a fun deck. Double Copycat, double Research, Pokecom to kind of, you know, move through our deck, be a bit more consistent. Giant Capes as well, which again, I just like this deck. Very simple, very straightforward, but just something I really like. I think the more consistent a deck is, the more fun it is. And what's cool about Falinks here with Rampardos is that you're guaranteed Falinks in the active. There's no other basic Pokemon in the deck. You're always going to start with Falinks, and this one Pokeball means that whenever you play Pokeball, you're going to find that second Falinks. So a lot more consistent, a lot more aggressive than you might think, and Rampardos is still a scary Pokemon. 130 is 130 no matter how you slice it, quite frankly. So there you go. Falinks Rampardos. Try it out. Might be something to take a look at this season. Shout out to Froggy X Wawan for playing this deck today. Hopefully he does well, and hopefully he can kind of put Rampardos back on the map. Next up is going to be Charizard. And, listen, before you guys comment down in the comment section and you go, hey, wait a minute, Maddie, there's nothing new in this deck. Nothing has been added. This is the exact same deck as it was previously. you're not wrong. But I wanted to include it still because I think Charizard has been retroactively buffed. I think that a lot of these new Mega Pokemon in the game are really, really strong. They have great sustain. However, they get 1-hit KO'd by Charizard, which means that Charizard inherently does have an advantage into things like Swampert, into things like Gardevoir, like Kangaskhan. And I think that makes Charizard actually a little bit more relevant than it ever has been. And we've actually been seeing quite a few Charizards see play in tournaments, and they've been doing pretty well. So again, even though this deck list has not changed at all, even though this is the exact same deck as it was in previous seasons, I think that its position in the metagame is actually improved, and it definitely operates at a different capacity than we're used to. We're still playing 1 Mega Charizard, 1 Small Charizard, double Entei, double Charmeleon, double Charmander. And that's how you play Charizard, right? Flame Patch here, red card Mars, which I love, Sabrina, May, Copycat. You know, this deck really isn't bad. I don't think Charizard was ever a bad deck. I just don't think it was well positioned. And, you know, quite frankly, like, no matter how strong a deck is, if it just loses, if it doesn't have good matchups into what's popular at the moment, then it's never really going to be that relevant. And I think that was always the issue with Charizard last season. So again, Charizard is actually a pretty new card. Like, this deck isn't like an old deck, but it's from a previous season, and I think it's been retroactively buffed here this season. So I wanted to just showcase it for the people that were maybe curious. This is what I would play if I'm playing Charizard, and in fact, I would actually somewhat recommend it as far as like decks go. It's definitely one of the stronger decks in the game. So there is Charizard. Okay, lastly, we're going to highlight something that quite frankly kind of terrifies me, but also upsets me slightly, which is going to be Greninja. And yeah. Here we are. Okay, this is Mega Kangaskhan. This is Turbo Pichu Mega Kangaskhan with Oricorio and Greninja. So some absolutely deviant player here has mixed together Turbo Kang and Oricorio Greninja to make potentially one of the most annoying decks that I have ever laid my eyes on. This deck terrifies me. It scares me, and it upsets me, quite frankly, to see this. I'm not happy about it, but I had to showcase it to you guys because, again, it's been doing very well in tournaments. Oricorio is always something that's very volatile early in seasons. People just don't like to tech for it, especially when they're playing new decks. They just don't want to like figure out like how to incorporate an Oricorio tech into their new archetype. So Oricorio always does well early in seasons. Kangaskhan's been something that has seen a ton of play. You can play it a million different ways because it's colorless and it's just easy to play. So here's a deck, again, that just sort of makes a ton of sense here. You could play multiple energies with this now that I'm thinking about it, because Pichu can generate lightning energies to Oricorio. In fact, you could just play water energies in this deck and utilize Greninja as an attacking option. So I don't know if we're playing dual energies. Well, we're definitely playing at least water and lightning because we are playing Irida. But I don't know if we're playing only water or playing dual energies for this deck. I'm not really sure. But that's another hilarious aspect of this deck is that we're playing the Oricorio Irida stuff, which coincidentally does kind of auto-win certain matchups in the game. So yeah, here you go, guys. I know this is something that maybe a lot of people are not super interested in playing, Greninja, Oricorio, Kangaskhan, but it does actually make quite a bit of sense, and I think this is a really strong creative list that at least early this season is going to be phenomenal. I think it is going to be really, really strong. Yeah, I got nothing really else to say, quite frankly. These are all sort of the upgraded archetypes in the game, right? So again, Lunala upgrade, Buzzwole upgrade, Giratina Darkrai upgrade, Donphan upgrade, Espeon upgrade, Gyarados upgrade, Rampardos upgrade, Charizard retroactively upgraded, and then Greninja upgrade. So those are the decks that we're highlighting in today's video. Again, the tournament is today. PMPT number 18 is going on today. So if you're watching this video, go to the channel, check out the live stream. We should be live today for Swiss rounds. And then again, we're going to be live tomorrow, Sunday. Probably no video tomorrow, but the live stream will be tomorrow, and then we'll be back on Monday to analyze the results of the tournament on Meta Monday. Again, we'll have to see. My predictions this weekend is that Hydreigon will likely just run away with things, just like I assumed it would, before the set release. Like last week when I was giving my meta predictions, I really thought that Hydreigon would see a ton of play and would likely just dominate. So I expect to see that this weekend. Maybe something becomes popular that is good into Hydreigon, but I just don't think a lot of the decks that people are choosing to play that are either new decks or whatever are good into Hydreigon. I think people just aren't really going to account for it, and it's likely going to run away with the meta, which is fine because I do think there's counterplay to Hydreigon. So as long as you know, that becomes sort of the first prominent deck, you know, the counter meta can develop, and then by the time we're into week 2 and week 3, things will even out and we'll kind of get a fresh meta game. But keep in mind, guys, this season's only going to be 4 weeks long. The ranked season only going to be 2 weeks long. So things are going to develop really, really quickly. You're going to want to stay tuned because things are going to be changing so quickly. We'll see how things operate here for sure. But anyway, that's the video. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Did I miss anything? Is there something that you wanted to mention that we didn't highlight in today's video? Definitely let me know. But don't forget to like and subscribe. Tune into the live streams. And yeah, that's basically it. All right, guys, let's get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.